Time.
Good morning, members. It's the appointed time. We have a quorum. Thank you for joining this meeting. This is the meeting of the panel on development. Item 1. Information papers issued since the meeting on the 18th of December last year. Those information papers are set out on the agenda. We now come to the next item. Items for discussion at the next meeting. Members, please refer to paper CP bracket 184/2025 bracket 01 and bracket 02. They are the list of outstanding items for discussion and the list of follow-up actions. Our next regular meeting will take place on the 25th of February. That's Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. And here are the items proposed by the government for discussion. 1. Funding application for the effluent polishing plants in the Yunnan South NDA and Tongshan-Q. 2. Proposed extension of a supernumerary position, that's an administrative officer staff grade C position at D2 under the planning division to take forward planning and land policy measures. Members, are we all good about those two items for the next meeting? All good? Next item. Item 3. Development proposals of new territories North Newtown and Kowloon. You can refer to the paper set out on the agenda. We now invite the officials to join us. Members who would like to speak, please press the request to speak button. Good morning, Secretary. The Secretary and her team are joining us. So we're discussing the new territories North Newtown or NTN Newtown and Kowloon. I don't propose to read out every single name. Members have the list of attendees. So can we first invite the Secretary to deliver the opening remarks? I know the slides will follow. Over to you, Secretary. Good morning, Chairman and members. For the Northern Metropolis, we have consistently stated that our goal was for the 3,000 hectares of new development area, our goal was to cover the 3,000 hectares of new development land. We wanted to release the proposals. Now we released the proposal about Kowloon North. Today, it's about the new territories North Newtown and Kowloon. This is the last two parts of the land development proposal. So now, for the 3,000 hectares of new land in the Northern Metropolis, people can now see what our plan will be. Again, today, the topic is the NTN Newtown and Kowloon. The NTN Newtown is the largest part of the Northern Metropolis. Developable area will be around 1,200 hectares. Other NDAs are roughly 300 to 600 hectares. So now for the NTN Newtown, 1,200 hectares, we have to be pragmatic. That means a phased approach to development. In that spirit, we have a priority area in mind. That's because by priority, we want to have a more focused discussion of the land use. We want to get the work started by 2028 for the priority area, and that means next year we will have to start the technical assessments and statutory plan making. So the priority area is a pragmatic approach and it will require in-depth discussion. As for the other parts, we still have the land use proposals. Since we're taking this phased approach, let's first focus on the priority areas. The entire area, 1,200 hectares, will spend many years. We have to be flexible with the land use. We come up with a proposal today, but the proposal may evolve with the changing socio-economic circumstances. So I want to say this upfront as something we all want to bear in mind. The second area we will cover today is Ma Long. Ma Long is more straightforward, less than 60 hectares. Ma Long will mostly be a small community, mostly private flats, to support the INT or innovation and technology in the loop. So Ma Long will be where the housing will be. We believe we can start Ma Long sooner, and that's rather straightforward. So that's the context. And now I want to give the floor to Mr. Vic Yao, who will give us more details. Mr. Vic Yao. Thank you, Chairman. Now, our preliminary proposals for the NTN New Town and Ma Long. Now, in the Northern Metropolis, there are 4 zones. Members are well aware of what they are. Now, the NTN New Town and Ma Long, they fall within the boundary commerce and industry zone. Positioning. The NTN New Town has 3 boundary control points: Lowu, Mankam-to, and Henyuan-wai. We see potential in the NTN New Town to develop BCP-related uses. As the Secretary said, the NTN New Town is a vast space, so that's ideal for industries that require space. That means we can have a business district and a base for emerging industries in the NTN New Town, and this can synergize with the Luohu district in Shenzhen. Ma Long, on the other hand, lies between Kowloon North and the Loop. We can turn Ma Long into a community with quality housing, open space, and other facilities to support Kowloon North and the Loop. The NTN New Town is more than 1,400 hectares. Ma Long, 55 hectares. First, the NTN New Town. Here's an overview. In the dark green, you see the NTN New Town. To the east, you see Henyuan-wai, Taku Lane, Pingche, all the way down to Queens Hill in the south. In the middle, Honglonghang, and then you go west, Mankam-to and Lowu south. That's the NTN New Town. You have 2 rail lanes and 1 major road that will drive the development of the NTN New Town. First, Northern Link Eastern Extension, and also the Northeast New Territories line. The first one connects the NOL, and the other one connects Henyuan-wai and Fanning Extension. And you will also see the Northern Metropolis Highway. Now, our proposals for this district. Now, in the brownish yellow area, Henyuan-wai and Mankam-to, we propose boundary mixed uses. This means both business and residential. Near Henyuan-wai, the purple area, that area will be for industries. Apart from the area around Henyuan-wai, there were also fringe areas within the area, also for industries. Around Taku Lane, that would be the land for the Northern Metropolis Unitown for tertiary institutions. To its south, the orange part, that's for cultural facilities. You go further south, the pinkish area, that's the sports hub. Around Hong Long Hang, Ta Kwu Lang, Ping Che, you see the yellow areas. That will be for residential areas. The same goes for Queens Hill. For this area, there will also be a green spine from the Dongjiang waterway to the east all the way to the west. It will be an 8-kilometer green spine. The blue parts will be public facilities, sewage treatment plants, effluent polishing plants, hospitals, and advanced waste-to-energy facilities, as well as other waste processing facilities. All that will be in the blue areas, in the fringe areas of this zone. Now, highlights. For highlights, gateway economy, emerging industries, cultural, education and sports hub, and the Green River Valley. First, the gateway economy. The BCPs used to be mostly about security. Now it's mostly for cross-boundary travel. Little development in the area so far. But given the integration between Hong Kong and Shenzhen and also this growth in cross-boundary passenger flow, there are huge opportunities for development in the areas around our BCPs. In the NT and Newtown, the Northern Link East Extension and the Northeast New Territories line will feature stations around Hung Yuen Wai, and that means new impetus for growth. That's why we propose a boundary mixed-use area in the parts around Hung Yuen Wai and Man Kam To BCPs. Those areas will be offering space for leisure, retail, and also financial services where Hong Kong has an edge. Emerging industries. We're making use of the locational advantage of the areas around BCPs for different industries. Now we have the East in, East out, West in, West out approach. This means Hung Yuen Wai will be a key BCP for goods in the East. In this area, you will see industries such as modern logistics. That means logistics complexes and also open-air operation. For food-related uses, now we have food control facilities around Man Kam To. Those facilities will be moved to somewhere near Hung Yuen Wai because the goods will be flowing through Hung Yuen Wai. And around that area in the future, you will see cold chain facilities for food and also hydroponic farms. Green industries, Eco Park 2, yard waste treatment and recycling. This area will offer space for these industries. Advanced manufacturing. So R&D, testing, certification, and training facilities will be accommodated here. That's to drive high-value adding industries such as modular integrated construction and MIMEC, multiple integrated mechanical and electrical plumbing. Advanced manufacturing means tech-driven emerging production. This will be a spacious area. That means we can put unforeseen emerging industries in this space. Now, the cultural, education, and sports hub. There will be the Unitown. Here, there will be 40 hectares for the Unitown, along with Ngau Tan Mei and Hong Shou Kiu, altogether more than 80 hectares for the Northern Metropolis Unitown as a whole. The cultural node will provide land for the second campus of the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts. Here, there will also be a museum cluster and a performance venue to strengthen Hong Kong's role as an East meets West center for international cultural exchange. Sports, there will be key sports facilities so that Hong Kong can host local and international games That also means venues for local athletes to train, and this will also foster exchange with the rest of the GBA.
Green River Valley, there will be a green spine of 8 kilometers running from Dongjiang Water Greenway, Green Corridor, to the Central Valley. Through revitalizing some waterway, there can be biodiversity and championing nature-based solutions. It can also enhance the ability of the new development areas of fighting floods or preventing floods. And it can also become a node connecting village areas and also provide a better countryside ambience. We propose the concept of urban-rural integration. So we'll keep all 21 existing indigenous recognized villages. In terms of urban design, we ensure that the new developments will blend in well with the villages harmoniously. Just now I mentioned there will be an 8-kilometer long green spine, and it can actually bridge the villages to urban life, and villagers can also benefit from the new comprehensively planned community, recreational, and commercial facilities, as well as basic infrastructures and new transportation links. And there will be also climate resilient measures. There will be new job opportunities, diverse opportunities, that is, for the entire Northern Metropolis region, not just New Territories North Newtown. The rural-urban integration itself will have a separate study to lay down guidelines for its development or implementation. The major planning parameters and land use budget, about 160,000 flats, total population about 450,000, new jobs number about 160,000. In terms of implementation, in view of the large scale of the NTN Newtown, as mentioned by the Secretary just now, we're proposing a phased implementation. And this will allow more effective use of our resources and help us to have a more orderly clearance of clearies and brownfields. It is also considered that public housing may not be a primary priority for NTN Newtown because in the coming decade, sufficient land has been identified to meet the long-term housing strategy supply target. With those considerations, we are coming up with a priority development area concept. The priority development area is basically around the Heung-Yuen-Wai BCP areas. There will be a commercial residential area to be developed in the areas around BCP. There will be a enterprise zone, and we also first developed the university town at the site to help Hong Kong become an area to attract talents. Near the university town, we have reserved areas for the development of a residential site. For the Heung-Yuen-Wai boundary mixed-use area near the BCP, there will be private housing and commercial and retail facilities. There are also a transportation links or interchange hub, allow park and ride parking spaces for cross-boundary passengers, providing about 12,000 to 13,000 flats supported with community facilities. The Heung-Yuen-Wai Enterprise Park involves about 64 hectares of land. Relocating the food control facilities from Mankam To to area near Heung-Yuen-Wai, that will allow for land to be reserved for food-related uses. And there are various enterprises to be given priority in this area. For example, since it's near the BCP, there will be a foothold of modern logistics industry and also advanced construction industry and advanced manufacturing to be developed. The university town covers about 40 hectares. It can actually complement the development of higher education in Hong Kong and also collaborate with more institutions in the Greater Bay Area. There can be student dormitories to be built, and part of the Central River Valley will pass through this university town to enhance the atmosphere there. Near the university town, there will be a accommodation area providing 5,000 to 6,000 private flats that are. The priority development area, the major planning parameters, about 17,000 flats to be built with a new population of about 45,000. Ma Long, its positioning is that it will be a node linking the Kwun Tong North NDA proper and the loop. Loop is here in the south is Kwun Tong North. In terms of transportation links, in the future there will be a connection road connecting the surrounding areas with Ma Long, so that it will be community linked to the enterprises in the loop and providing community support to the loop area. And this is the preliminary development proposal for Ma Long. The brownish yellow is earmarked for residential development. The blue sides are community facilities, including sports ground, reservoirs, etc. And the green areas is the open space. There are three major projects. The first one is a linking node connecting the loop and Kwun Tong North. It will only take a few minutes by car to reach the center of the loop from Kwun Tong North. So it will be a linking node in this project and also enhance the convenience of residents to go to various places across Hong Kong. The green area is an extension of Kwun Tong North. It's earmarked as a new residential community, mainly providing private housing with supporting facilities and to support the I&T talents in the loop, and also synergize with the open space and sport facilities in Kwun Tong North nearby. We do emphasize the blue-green inclusion. So there's a MTL stream in the green and nature's natural spine. So there will be open spaces on both sides as well, from north to south, serving as a north-south link, providing much greenery, and it is connected to the planned open space network in Kwun Tong North to the south and the wetlands in Hu Hock Wai in the north. Major planning parameters: number of flats to be provided about 10,000. Total population expected to be 25,000. Our next stage of work, actually on January 17, we began our 2-month public engagement exercise. We'll take into account public views before refining the development proposals and to formulate recommended outline development plans. Once we have decided on the land use proposals, we'll further consider the project timetable and phase implementation plan. At present, the Kwun Tong North New Town, as I said, there is a priority development area. Within this area, the relocation works will be carried out first, and for the entire priority development area by 2028-2029 will begin at the earliest. For the entire Kwun Tong North New Town is very spacious. 1,000 hectares of the area will be for short-term, long-term development. We will have phased development. In terms of priorities, it will follow this schedule. Hong Long Han area and Man Kam To BCP area will be our next priority, mainly for public facilities, BCP economy, advanced manufacturing, and green industry. And then the next stage after that will be Queen's Hill, Ping Che, Tai Kwu area, mainly for housing and culture and sports facilities development. After that will be the Longwood South area mainly for housing. Ma Kowloon itself, part of it, falls within the remaining phase development of Kowloon North NDA, and therefore it can commence site formation works in 2027 at the earliest. So the schedule I just mentioned is about government-led projects. So depending on the nature of the projects, there could be private developers' involvement. So actually, Henyuwai and Ma Kowloon areas have commercial elements and have mixed-use or residential retail developments. Therefore, they could be developed actually with private participation. Other than yes, so thank you. I think we know the list of members who've asked to speak. Chen Yuming, Lau Kok Fan, Chu Kok Keung, Yu Pak Leung, and Vice Chairman Wendy Hong, Patrick Yik, Gary Zhang, and Cheng Han Pan are in the queue. I'm going to speak as well. Each member will have 4 minutes. Since various other members have asked to speak, because this topic is supposed to end at 9:35, so we need to seize the time because of a long queue. So 4 minutes, Chen Yuming first. Thank you, Chairman. The New Territories North Newtown, most of its areas belong to Ta Kowloon. Let me declare, I'm the chairman of the Rural Committee in Ta Kowloon, and I own some plots of land in the area. But I found that we are talking about public interest more, so it doesn't contradict with my own interest. So I asked the Bureau to give me written replies afterwards. As for the name of the New Territories North Newtown, is naming since Hongshu Q, Ha Chun, and Santin and Technology Park and so forth are studied in historical sites. And the map in the paper shows that the New Territories North Newtown, most of its area, including the priority development areas in the 3 BCP, belong to Tai Kowloon Village. It is sited in New Territories Northeast. I strongly suggest that NTN Newtown should be renamed and maintain Tai Kowloon in the naming because of its historical status. And the Tai Kowloon is not just a pond, but it actually a large area. But when in your mentioning of Tai Kowloon, Ping Chair, they are all parts of Tai Kowloon. Please, in your public consultation, please make it clear. Don't confuse the public, particularly the older villagers who have strong views about how you call the various places. And in the paper, it mentioned that the enterprise park will have emerging industries. But I found that the content is so confusing, covering food production, logistics, and related enterprises. It seemed the livelihood industries are all put in Tai Kowloon, and there's no mention about low-altitude economy. The chief executive, when he met the press this month, he said the government would nurture emerging industries, develop low-altitude economy. So can the secretary clarify the enterprise park in the does it really cover emerging industries? It seems to focus more on industries related to people's livelihood. So it's far from really related to the emerging industries. And the planning for the university town is also clearly related, and it need to be. I think you need to be clearer how you're gonna develop the enterprise park to encourage emerging industries in Hong Kong. Or we need to have health industries, for example, and Lee Ma Hung Road and Park Fushan areas development. It is centering on Park Fushan and is zoned for green belt. But let me remind you, since the establishment of the Robin's Nest Country Park and the proposal of the new eco corridor, actually in Robin's Nest Country Park is already experiencing organic growth due to the other new initiatives. And there are hikers from Shenzhen and Hong Kong going there to appreciate the various natural characteristics. So we need to be clearer about the future positioning of the discussed area. And also, Pafushan is related to Shenzhen by sea, by land, and an important site actually in between linking Shenzhen and Hong Kong, and it can further drive the development of recreational tourism. So I hope that the Bureau can provide good rationale and include Pafushan in the relevant development. And I propose that the area near Pafushan should be incorporated into the priority development area, and the area near Pafushan should be given more planning flexibility. The fourth point is I hope that there can be relocation on site in situ. My understanding is that quite a number of villagers have been there for 3 generations, that they have deep emotional bonds to the area. And there's also one village was not recognized by the British as a proper village. So I hope that for the first phase relocation, you need to ensure that all existing villages there will be relocated in situ. So because of limited time, I hope that the Bureau just give me written replies.
Ms. Chen Yumei has asked for a written response after the meeting because she raised many points. We move on to the next member, Mr. Lau Kwok Fan. Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to see that the Northern Metropolis Coordination Office is following the action agenda released earlier. So now the development proposals are out. We now see the plan. Today it's about the NTN New Town and Ma Chou Long. I agree with the approach. We need to develop the BCP economy. I moved a motion about this, and that motion was passed. We're talking about more than 1,000 hectares. It's only right to have a priority area. We have to move first with some part of the NM. We need to get the industries in first. It's good to have this industry-driven approach. There's infrastructure, Northern Link Eastern Extension, Northeast New Territories line, but those infrastructure pieces won't fall into place until 2039. So we move first with some parts of the NM. We have some kind of home job balance that can fill in the gap of the missing transport infrastructure. I support that. Now I have some thoughts about the PDA priority development area. One, can we be flexible with the use of land for industries? There's an enterprise park, and there will be modern logistics, advanced manufacturing, and construction. We can be more flexible with the areas for logistics, advanced manufacturing. Let's be more fluid. Let's take a more integrated approach. Because these industries are interrelated. Let's consider the market demand. We don't have to be too rigid about which part, as in how many hectares specifically for logistics. Let's be more fluid. Let's be more flexible. Let's do some pilot schemes for this area to be developed first. My second point is to leverage market forces. That it means getting private players on board. There's private land in the area. The government will have to resume the land, and that will cost a lot. But maybe private players will be able to support the development. So we need a plan for private businesses or private landowners to use that land for industry development, and then you can have public-private partnership. As I said, let's get private market players on board. Some players may be outside the PDA, but what they do may be in line with the government's plan. So can the NMCO talk to these private players? Can we let these players go ahead with their plans if their plans are in line with what the government has in mind? Secretary. I think the members' ideas are in line with what we have in mind. Paragraph 20 of the paper comes with a footnote. If we have some thoughts about the possible industries in the area, in our plan, the future plan, we won't be unduly rigid about pigeonholing or specifying the number of hectares for each industry. We have also relaxed the rules for in situ land exchange. Industry-based land swaps will also be eligible. Mr. Chu Kwok-keung. I agree with Ms. Chen Yutming. We should keep the name Taco Lang for the area. I also support the idea of same district resettlement. And can I invite the government to also share the written response to Ms. Chen with me as well? Now, on the railway lanes with stops in Hong Long Hang and Lo Wu South, the Hong Long Hang location is actually quite far away from the river node, and that's on the cultural node, and that's not accessible for people leaving the performance venue, and that fails to meet the needs of rural residents. So that falls short of meeting the goal of rural-urban integration. So can we move the Hong Long Hang station northwards, and can we put stations closer to the cultural hub, the cultural node? I think the plan has neglected Fanling North. So between Queens Hill and Fanling North, can we put a station in Luen Mo Ho for people? Now, the Northeast New Territories line will end in Fanling. Will that add to the pressure on the East Rail line? Can we move the alignment southward to take some pressure off the East Rail line? Around Lo Shu Lang, I propose a carriageway or some kind of transport link that will go past Hong Long Hang to Fanling. If you want to go to Sheungshui or Fanling, you have to go past Man Kam To, and that's a major detour, and that's inconvenient for local residents. Secretary. The three questions are mostly about transport. The plan here is preliminary in nature. The members suggested putting stations in certain locations or moving some stations. We will talk to the Transport and Logistics Bureau. So what we have here is not the finalized plan. There is scope for changes. For the New Territories Northeast line, the member wondered if that would add pressure on the East Rail line because that line will be linked with the East RL. Why don't I invite the Director of Civil Engineering and Development to tell us more about that? The TLB has proposed a rail project, and that's the Central Rail Link. This means for people trying to go to the urban center from the northern metropolis, there are now two lines, 2 Mile Line and the East Rail Line. But once you have the Central Rail link in place, that link will take some of the passengers away from the 2 Mile Line and the East Rail Line, and that means taking pressure off those two lines as well. Mr. Perry, you. Now we have to enforce the time limit, so I have to draw the line here. Mr. Perry, you. We're talking about 1,420 hectares. This is the largest chunk of the northern metropolis. And I also see this idea of the gateway economy. We should go ahead with this fast. There are 3 BCPs in the area. The plan also refers to urban-rural integration and also the priority area. I support all that. Infrastructure first, industry-driven, I support all that. I share Ms. Chen Yutming's concerns. We want the northern metropolis to be a great place to live in, to work, and to travel to. Let's look at Pakfushan. There's a path for patrol officers, and then you have Limahang and the Robin's Nest, and then all the way to Shuttlecock. I don't see any plan for such a link. There's also a blue and green eco recreation zone. So can we link up this part, that is the boundary commerce and industry zone, with the blue and green recreation, tourism, and conservation circle? We need more links between these areas. Now I want to delve into the culture, sports, and education areas. There will be a Unitown in the NM. In this particular zone, there will be a sports hub, a cultural node. So can I get a sense of the overall plan of the culture and sports facilities in the entire northern metropolis? I also see this green spine involving the Central River Valley and the Dongjiang Water Greenway. It's good to have water there. Will it be just a water feature, or will this be a waterway where people can do rowing, or you can be used for transport purposes? Secretary. Ms. Chen Yutming also brought up Pakfushan. Our plan is not to develop Pakfushan at the moment because there are burial grounds for indigenous villages. And Pakfushan is a mountain after all. We're not trying to flatten the hill. Both the member and Ms. Chen Yutming also wondered if we could use Pakfushan as a place for tourist attractions. Burial grounds can also be green space. We're open to views about how we can make it work. We have no plans for developing tourist attractions at Pakfushan because of the reason I just mentioned, the burial grounds. The member also asked about the Central River Valley. It's a major water main for Dongjiang water. But we can consider decking over this channel, and we can show people this facility and tell people about the history. When you get closer to the university town, you will see a water body. The man mentioned rowing, boating. We're still open to views, but what we have in mind is more passive in nature. So on either side of the bank, you get to admire the water body instead of water sports along the valley. In the new territory's north area, we have already planned some sports facilities, such as the sports hub, 30 hectares in area. Mr. Vic Yao has something to add.
How we can better tap into the tourism potential of the area. Pak Fu Shan is near Robin's Nest, and Robin's Nest recently has become the 25th country park of Hong Kong. There are some caves which are open already over there, and we're going to deepen the design of the new Territories North New Town, and we'll pay attention to its connectivity or how it can better be developed, tying in with the presence of Robin's Nest Country Park nearby, so that people can access Robin's Nest more conveniently. The access road for Robin's Nest Country Park now is mainly Shanzhui, through Shanzhui in Shuttlecock. Nima Hang is a bit far from there, so we will see how we can better enhance the connectivity between the areas. And members also asked about the overall cultural sports development. In terms of sports development, this area can provide large space for building key sports facilities. But in another area like Kowloon, there are sports grounds to be provided. And in different new development areas, there will also be district-level recreational facilities. In terms of cultural facilities, there will be a cultural area. In Sentin and other places, there will also be key cultural facilities near Lau Fau Shan. There will be performing venues to be built. So on the whole, in our various new development areas, besides those earmarked for industrial developments or other purposes, we have an overall plan for cultural recreational facilities. Wendy Hong, time is precious. If there's not enough time for your response, we can talk later. For the 4 development areas, excluding the last one, the eco-tourism area, the Mao Salong and the Newtown development, actually it's the last puzzle for the North Metropolis, last piece for the North Metropolis plan. Looking at the whole of the NM plan, I think the overall plan for the NM will affect the development for specific areas. For example, in deciding on your phase development, it's very important to make good decisions because your resources are limited. We need to see what are the key areas, projects to be kickstarted first, and what can be dealt with at a later stage. Secretary just now said that New Territories North will be a priority development area, but I think in deciding which should be given the priority, you should look at the bigger picture. Look at it from the overall development of the NM, which covers 3,000 hectares in total. And so as to maximize the use of limited resources and to expedite the overall development of the NM, we wanted to make sure that there is enough population there before we develop the transportation development. But now you want to have a different development approach. You want to have the transportation links first and have the enterprises moved there first or developed first there before moving the residents in. So from the overall NM perspective, how you would decide on the priorities. What are the key railways or basic infrastructure roads that must be built first to drive the development of the entire NM? The NT North Newtown development, do you think that it really fits the demands for the overall development of NM? And secondly, you talk about the development of gateway economy, but it is closely linked to the adjustments of the future BCP. You need to look at the bigger picture. On the whole, the Shenzhen River is a key border area. We need to make sure that the security and environmental protection purposes of the border area can be maintained. So you need to have proper adjustments of the border area. Actually, there are quite a number of border areas are restricted zones. For example, Lok Ma Chau Port. How can you adjust the restricted area in the BCP so that we can maximize the value of the BCP? And my third question is about the transitional housing. Late last year, we talked about Old May proposal, and I asked the Development Bureau, how are you going to deal with the transitional housing there? In Old May, there's one transitional housing with government investment of $680 million, and the people will move in soon. So now the government now has approved $330 million for the development of the Port Oil housing project, but the accommodation ratio is only 33%. How are you going to deal with transitional housing? If you just let people move in there for a few years and then it'll be demolished, and that would be a big waste of resources. If you want to go for the model of land swap so that the transitional housing can be better used, that will be worth considering. Because we need to aim at building the housing for use for at least 50 years. Otherwise, it will be a waste of resources. Wendy Hong made 4 points, but I think some of her points could only be answered by other bureaus. So, Secretary, would you have any response nonetheless, or provide supplementary information to her afterwards? I want to respond to her point about the transitional housing. As for the restricted area near the boundary, I will ask Mr. Yao to respond. Transitional housing. I know whether it's for Newton West North, whether it's a transitional housing within the project development area, it will be in the future turned into a residential establishment in support of the university town. You may say that does it mean inconsistent planning on the part of the government? But let me remind you, for transitional housing from day one, we said that we would look for land without earmarked long-term use to be used for transitional housing only for a short term. But once the long-term use has been decided upon, then the transitional housing will have to be relocated. So that's what the government said from day one. Therefore, all along, we need to come up with planning for the long-term use of the site used for transitional housing. But that doesn't mean that we'll compress the user period of the transitional housing. Take this as an example. Well, the housing will be in Xingping Village. It is now earmarked for private housing to support the university town, and there is flexibility in the schedule. We've stressed that it will not affect the transitional housing pledged by the government. That is the minimum operational period of that kind of housing. And after the minimum operational period is over, we will keep discussing it with the Housing Bureau, and in consideration of the development of the university town, we'll see when that housing would need to be relocated. And also, the building components of the transitional housing, we mentioned that every day the modules can be reused elsewhere. So all along, we never want to waste any resources used for transitional housing. We hope that our planning will remain consistent all the way. Sorry, members, Michael Tan and Lau Kwok Fun, as I said, I've drawn the line because we are supposed to end the discussion on this topic at 9:35. So, and there are 6 members who have not yet spoken. I just came in 1 minute late. Can I at least ask for 2 minutes? I promise to finish in 2 minutes. Well, if everyone is given 4 minutes now, if you don't use more than that, more time than that, then we may be overrun by a lot. We'll see. Okay, I'll be quick. Thank you, Chairman. Just supplementary information for you. In 2010s, we have largely scaled down the areas near the boundary areas, and the restricted area near the boundary has been minimized, much minimized, with just some buildings there. So the entire boundary area is only left with a road used for patrolling. So the boundary area is really, really limited, and the road for patrolling will be further developed. And also, as for our choice for priority development, I think transportation infrastructure, for example, the Northern Link, that is actually important for development of new development areas like Kowloon North. In Hang Yun Wai Port and so forth, they could use existing Hang Yun Wai Road to have early development. Therefore, we propose that those sites be given priority for development because of the existing infrastructure. Next one, Frankie Yick. Well, the development proposals of New Territories North Newtown and Ma Tong Lo, I welcome these proposals. And it's good to have developments near the BCPs, and modern logistics relatively occupy quite a large percentage of the proposed areas. I welcome that, but I have a request. Right now, the government has begun land resumption in Santin, Hong Shui Kiu, and a lot of the and also in the brownfield site, users there are greatly affected, and also the operators there are affected. And I hope that you can adjust your priorities after you've done with the site formation. That will provide more convenience for the operators there. And also in your paper, you said that modern logistics. You talk about multi-story building for modern logistics, but that may not be most suited for the development of modern logistics. Lately, I've given some information to the permanent secretary about what the logistics industry want to see in relation to the storage facilities, their preferred storage facilities. So please take a look at my paper. And the Environmental Protection Park, I welcome that because lately I received quite a lot of requests from the industry who want to go to the eco park. Okay, and they want to do. Some people want to do the recycling industry there. So please consider that. You know, the waste tires or the batteries of e-vehicles actually a need of the modern facilities to process them for recycling purpose.
Secretary, I thank the member for supporting our plan. Logistics In the priority development area, there will be space for logistics, and that will involve not just multi-story complexes. I will look into the details shared by the member. We know brownfield operators are affected. That's why we want to spread out the process. This means for existing brownfield site operators that will be affected by the PDA, the area to be affected will be 20 hectares. For the new territories as a whole, brownfield site operators to be affected 170 hectares. For the PDA, we will affect 20 hectares of land. So we will take it one step at a time. And in the PDA, there will be land for logistics. What about Eco Park? We have reserved land for the future Eco Park, but that falls outside the PDA. We will work with the EEB to see when they want to start their Eco Park project. Chairman, the logistics sector needs the land urgently, and also the Eco Park urgently, but then the EEB doesn't seem to share that sense of urgency, so please look at that. Mr. Gary Zhang. I agree with Ms. Chen Yutming about keeping the name of Kowloon. We call this project the NTN New Town. The general public, including me, is left confused. We also heard about the railways planned for the area. We know the study will take time. The stations to be put there are for a suburban area. The stations should not be so wide apart from each other. When you think of the NM as a town, a city in itself, that means many parts of the NM will not be covered by a station that is within 500 meters of the station. So let's make changes to that arrangement. Now, the second campus for the Hong Kong Academy of Performing Arts. So that means the Wan Chai campus of the HKAPA will stay. Why is that? There will be enough land in the northern metropolis for the HKAPA. Why not just put the HKAPA in the NM? Otherwise, you have a campus in the south on Hong Kong Island and another in the north. Is that really a good idea for the students and instructors? I now turn to urban-rural integration. It's been talked about often, but that's just a concept for town planning. From what I understand as urban-rural integration and for local residents, it's more than just about design and appearances. At the core of urban-rural integration is that residents should be able to share in the results of economic growth. That's the concept that lies at the heart of rural-urban integration. But now the urban and the rural parts are still segregated, separate. Will rural residents get to share in the success of economic growth? I don't see that element reflected in the plans for the northern metropolis. I also heard there is a consultancy study on rural-urban integration. So will that look at how you achieve the integration, or will that study simply focus on the appearance? Chairman, I want to address the point about rural-urban integration. Rural-urban integration should be more than just about a rural part and an urban part coming together. We have to identify the features, the cultural heritage of the rural parts, whether there are tourist attractions. Some villagers may want to try offering bed and breakfast. That's why we want to start a study about rural-urban integration. We will look at the mainland and also overseas experience. We want to learn from these places to see how you find out about what's special about a village, the rural part, how we get the rural residents involved. That's why we started the study. We will look at the experience elsewhere. We will also talk to the rural residents and Hernie Cook in Hong Kong. We want to find out what those people have in mind. So that work is underway. Now I turn to the HKAPA. Why a second campus? Why not move the HKAPA from Wan Chai to the north instead? We want to promote the performing arts. Having an extra venue to cater to another audience base and having another campus for students will bring benefits, because that will highlight the government's commitment to promoting culture and performing arts. Now, on the positions of the stations, I said the plan is a preliminary plan. We have flexibility. We can move the stations a bit. But we put the stations in the yellow parts on the slide for a reason. Those are where the flats will be. That has to do with the 15-minute living circle or 15-minute neighborhood. The point is to allow the future residents there to access different places within 15 minutes. On further enhancements to the plan, there is certainly scope for working on that. Now, we have overrun a bit, so let's move on to the next member, Mr. Andrew Lam. The Secretary just addressed rural-urban integration. For me, the last thing I want to see is to see rural-urban integration relegated to purely a matter of town planning. We want more than just rural-urban coexistence. We need functional integration too. We want to see not just another urban village many years from now. Now here's another idea for the government to consider. The CEDD has projects in different parts of Hong Kong. In this zone, there is much greater flexibility. I believe there will be a lot of work, a lot of relocation going on in this zone in the next 10 to 20 years. My question is there a policy, a mechanism to manage the relocation and the temporary land uses, and that involves brownfields and transitional housing to smoothen the process? A clear action plan or policy on that will be helpful for the process. For the Northern Metropolis, I commend the Development Bureau for moving fast. We see proposals coming out. We want infrastructure first, an industry-driven approach. But many things have yet to be finalized. Education is one such example. So the several parts altogether 100 hectares. If we stick to 65% as density, the total construction cost will be more hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's still a big sum, even if we get all 8 UGC-funded universities involved together. But the public will be wondering what you will be doing, how you go about doing that. The NMCO has a role to play. Please explain how that will work for the public. We're talking about a vast area. So in the future statutory plan making process, we will start with the PDA. And as for the other parts, can we have a plan? Can we have some kind of proposal, as Mr. Lam said? So we will think about how we can come up with the blueprint, because it will take time to make plans, but then other players may also have their own plans. So we have to tie in with the other parties and we have to guide them in a sense. Now, on education, the policy address mentioned the Education Bureau will have to roll out a plan and outline about tertiary institutions by 2026. That plan, that outline will have to come out by 2026. I know the Education Bureau is working on that. The NMCO will help out with coordination. Mr. Lam also mentioned INT. In the Sentin Technopole, 300 hectares of land, the Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry is also looking at this area about the different aspects, such as what industries to bring in. A proposal will come out this year. For our side, we will work on the coordination. Thank you. Dr. Ben Chen. I'm grateful to the Secretary and the Bureau for the coordination. People are left confused about the name, the NTN town, new town. So can we do something about the name of the NTN new town so that people will have an easier time following what it means? Now I turn to industries. We need industries to provide jobs. We also want the pressure on transport mitigated. Otherwise, you have an area with no jobs, so people living there will have to travel outside of the district, and that puts pressure on the transport. So has the government talked to businesses? Has the government talked to industries about whether the industries will move to the area? So the question is, are industry players interested in this area? The government is putting forward a plan it will take time for the plan to be finalized. But some industries may have come to you and asked to get on board. But then some years from now, the ship may have sailed by then. Some industries may want to get in now. So what are some ways we can keep those industries instead of letting them just drift away? We want to bring in new industries. We also want to support the cutting edge industries. There are people operating on 20 hectares of land in the area. So what policy is there to support the existing industries instead of just driving industries out and starting over? Industries exist there for a reason. They operate there for a reason. So in the government's planning and design, has the government given thought to promoting the existing industries? Would there be support for these industries so that those industries can stay and meet our future needs?
Secretary, many members talk about the naming. Well, we do hope that the new territories, North Newtown, be given a proper name. It's a bit confusing now, but we thought about proposing a new name. But in the end, we decided that we should focus on land uses and don't distract people's attention to the naming itself. But we welcome, particularly members from Kowloon Village. From your perspective, what you think is a better name? We do intend to improve on the naming. And secondly, on industrial development, it is related to question 3 as well. Various enterprises have communicated with the government. When they knock on our door, whether it's on the knocking on the door of the NM Coordination Office or our Key Industries Office, our 3 offices do communicate with each other. No matter who they approach, whoever wants to know more about the Northern Metropolis, we will do the explaining job. And there are also some lands which are actually at a mature stage, including Kowloon North and Hong Shui Kiu. We are carrying out development on a pilot basis, and we're also carrying out research and surveys to see what developments could be commissioned quickly. And if there are industries which prefer the location of new territories north, and we don't want to wait for the priority development area, if they have their eye on a particular location, as long as it ties in with our plan, we will see whether it's worth maybe expediting some work for the sake of particular industries. And we have priorities, and we have to consider our financial capacity as well. But there is flexibility, and we are open to all discussions. And to help affected brownfield sites, well, we would help with the relocation of any operators there. And as the chairman always pushed us to speed up the work of relocation of particular brownfield sites. So we are working on that. Hopefully, we can give you the exact locations of sites, relocation sites. Next one, Ma Feng Kwok, 4 minutes. On various key points, I support the government's latest planning proposals. On the whole, I do welcome them. But as for the schedule, I think it's a bit slow. In 2028, 2029, you will begin the work, and then you'll develop on the by phases. Can you expedite your work? Because there's an urgent need for land. As for the actual content, I want to say a few things. Firstly, about conservation and cultural development. The North New Territories is an area where there are more early immigrants from China, so that could be villages worth conserving. So you should try also think of how to revitalize those ancient villages to showcase the history of New Territories to the public. Besides supply of water from China, you may want to keep some villages and come up with ways to promote tourism through them or to keep proper records of history. And in your future development, you may also pay attention to possible archaeological finds. That's my first concern. And secondly, about industries, I'm concerned about the hydroponic farms. Of course, that's fine. But how about poultry farms? You need to make sure that those farms are distant from residential areas because of concern about sewage and so forth. So you need to see whether the particular farms are in suitable sites. And thirdly, about the culture and sports hub. You use the word hub. Firstly, I think you need to make sure that it has convenient transportation links. From now, from the look of it, it seems that transportation links are not that well arranged because the railway stations are quite far away. So you need to improve on the transportation links because when you call it a hub, then if like the performing Academy for Performing Arts is relocated there, the land is there, but you need to also make sure there are supplementary facilities near the academy to support the teaching of performing arts. APA now has campuses in Wan Chai and Pao Lam. If it were to have a third campus, well, would it be better to concentrate all the three campuses in the same site? And if you want to call it a hub, then the academy should have its own role. And as for the university town, are you going to have just one academy or various university facilities to be located there? If they all put together on the same site, 40 hectares is not that big. So what is your concept for the university town overall? And also about sports. Sports are important. We all keep talking about culture, tourism and sports. So how can you have these three areas complement each other? Can you elaborate on that, Secretary? Let me just respond to the question on university town, and then I'll ask Mr. Yao to talk about the modern facilities for poultry farming and the consideration for APA. University town in the entire NM, it will have a site area of 90 hectares, but it will be all located on the same site. Most of that will be in Alta May with the area of 40 hectares. New Territories North, there will be another 40 hectares of University Town. 40 hectares does not include the site for the APA because the APA site will be incorporated into the Central River Valley site. And I'm sure it will be able to house, well, the other university town will be able to house various institutions of higher education. As for the other questions, I'll ask Mr. Yao to supplement. As for the multi-story poultry farms, it is not considered part of the priority development area. Once we've decided on its exact location, we would definitely, as mentioned, pay attention to the nature of the farm, and hopefully the multi-story farm in the future, its future operations and its cleanliness and its potential impact on the neighboring areas, that is of the future livestock farm, we will, of course, pay extra attention to it. And thirdly, we'll make sure that the area is also close to neighboring transportation links. And APA, the concept is that we want to provide a new campus for APA. Now you can see that APA has its own urban campus, but there's a reason for looking for a new campus. APA, of course, is a familiar, popular performing venue, so there's a rationale for keeping both campuses in the urban area and in the future NT North. But whether we should combine the campuses, I will reflect your concern to the Bureau. Michael Tian, just now Vice Chairman, was told that he wanted to speak after we've drawn a line. So Vice Chairman said that he would like to speak, but only for 2 minutes. Please make use of the 2 minutes. Mr. Tian. Yes, I'll be quick. Let me declare that I'm a member of the NM Advisory Committee. It is the only hope for future Hong Kong. But for the NM industries, of course, I hope that it will come true. But if you move too many people out there to live there, then you need to be sure that there's enough transportation links. But the NT and New Town in the future it is expected to have a population of 100,000. And now you're going to build a railway link to Fanling to be connected to the East Rail Line. But Shanshui and Kowloon North, altogether with a population of 200,000 and plus this 400,000, and together with Hong Kong people living in Shenzhen, coming to Hong Kong for work in the future, in Fanling and north of Fanling, there will be close to 1 million people living in the areas. So you think that people might go a roundabout way to go to Kam Sheung Road and then take the railway line to go to Hong Kong? That would be a joke. If you are going to live there, you must go to the Fanling station instead of taking the roundabout route. So that means people living in the University Town, Tai Po, or Sha Tin, they will not be able to get on board the train. So this is a major gambling. In the future, in the morning rush hour, people going to Shenzhen and coming down to central Hong Kong through the East Rail Line, there will be too many passengers to handle by the East Rail Line. So you might want to build a light rail line to take people to Tai Wai so people can change to Tuen Ma Line. They wouldn't go a roundabout route going to Kowloon Tong. So if you want people in the downstream to be able to get on board the train, you must give them more choices of transportation. So please carefully consider the railway lines. I thought about it for a long time. Yes, Michael Tian points out a practical issue. I'm sure after the meeting, the Development Bureau and the Transport Logistics Bureau will have to further discuss and fine-tune their future transportation plan. I think you may need to consider all the issues brought by people working or going to school in other districts. Thank you for Mr. Tan for your reminder. I will communicate with the Logistics Bureau. The North Territories North, what you can see in the plan, we still need to carry out detailed traffic impact assessment. And we will carry out in-depth study for sure. And in the process of our study, what's worth thinking is that often we assume that people would come from north to south, all the way to Hong Kong Island. But once the northern metropolis is formed, people flow may change because in the NM itself, it is already very rich metropolis. So all your assumptions about people flow, in what direction will people go, may be different in the future. And that's what we need to consider as well. But I support development of industries in NM. But if you want to bet on people moving to live in NM, I think that's a major gamble. Well, sorry, Mr. Tan, you've used up your team list. Your views are heard, and Secretary has responded.
It's my turn now. Mr. Lau Kwok-Feng and Dr. Wendy Hong would like to speak for the second round, but sorry, we don't have time. We still have another important item lining up. Now, for my turn, I agree with the other members who have spoken. The NTN New Town as a name is problematic. Look at the northern metropolis as a whole. There are many new towns. Why isn't Hongzhou Hiuhachu not a new town? And why does Matulong get to keep its name? So, why do we name this area the NTN New Town? Why not stick to the original names for the new town? For the zone, the principle is infrastructure first, and we take an industry-driven approach. Members have raised different questions. But we only get a vague sense of what industries there will be, so that means more thorough planning will be needed. We have to be clear about what industries we want in that area. Do we want some industries? Do we want to phase out other industries? There are brownfield site operators in construction. So in development, when land is repurposed or used for other purposes, that's understandable. But let's also bear in mind that there are vital economic activities on the land. To get things right with these activities, you will need a detailed plan. And that issue remains unresolved so far. And I think the Development Bureau will have to come up with a plan. Now, I'm known as the chef of the electrical members here. So let me raise the point about soy sauce. Soy sauce, even premium soy sauce, is on offer and in demand in Hong Kong. People running such businesses offering traditional condiments and food are highly valued. So my point is, let's not rush to drive out our valuable assets. Let's not rush to drive out traditional industries. Take the soy sauce operations there. They are an asset to Hong Kong. Other members have expressed concerns about industries in this area. So I just want to share my thoughts on this as well. There's a 2-month consultation going on. The government will hear the public's views. I know the Development Bureau is committed to the cause. There are different plots in the northern metropolis. The Bureau explained the plan to us. But in this process, we need other bureaus involved too, such as bureaus in charge of the industries and also the Education Bureau. We will need some reassuring future plans. Take the unit town, 80 hectares of land. What kind of universities do we want? Or do we simply want the land for our existing universities? What matters the most is not the land, but also where do we find the professors? Where do we find students? Universities are complaining about under-enrollment. A study in Hong Kong brand as a slogan is not good enough. Electrical members are not impressed. Secretary, a brief reply. I have overrun myself. Members are concerned about industries and how things will be implemented. Now we have the NMCO. There's also a steering committee on the Northern Metropolis, and we will follow up on, and these bodies will follow up on these matters. Chairman, you mentioned food industries. In this zone and also in Kowloon North, indeed, our plans will affect soy sauce operations. There will be food testing and its certification centers. We can think about whether we can allow those food operations back. We can think about that. So that's for this item. We thank the officials joining us for this item. We now come to the next item, item 4, proposed amendments to the Land Titles Ordinance. That's CAP 585. The paper is set out on the agenda. So members, officials will be joining us for the next item. Members have already pressed the request to speak button. Mr. Lau Kwok Fan, Mr. Michael T, Ms. Carmen Khan, Dr. Wendy Ho, Mr. Andrew Lam, and Mr. Louis Long. Secretary, please, the opening remarks followed by the slides. You can see many members joining us for this item. In a moment, the land registrar will give us a presentation. The presentation may look straightforward, but it touches on a deeper topic. And there are many technical legal issues for this proposal. That's why we have a larger team here. The existing land registration system is a deed registration system. A deed is simply about registration. A deed requires a solicitor to do the investigation for each transaction, and that's a cumbersome process. So now we are trying to streamline the process. The plan is that from a certain date onwards, when land is granted, we will put in place this title-based system. This means a transaction is registered. That registration proves ownership. That means from that point onward, future solicitors won't have to go through the historical deed. Just look at the latest registration, and then you have ownership, and that will be registered in the land registry. After our paper came out, we got some support. Some people urged us to move faster. Go ahead. Others asked us to cover more land under this proposal. We will come to the Q&A after the presentation. Our objective is to move fast. This matter has been held up for more than 20 years. We want to cover at least some land under this system first. Let's put in place this good system for at least some land. So we start with the low-hanging fruit. That's our approach. Now I invite the land registrar, Ms. Joyce Tim, to deliver or give us the presentation. In December 2022, we briefed electrical members on this matter. Members generally supported the New Land First proposal. This means the land titles ordinance will cover the new land first. We have reached an advanced stage of the drafting. In March this year, we will be able to introduce the bill. We also want to take this opportunity to address some points raised by members in December 2022. We will come to those points later. Now, as the Secretary said, our land registration system is a deed registration system. It has been in place for over 180 years. We register the instrument, not the title. That instrument is simply about priority. But that is no guarantee of title to the property. That's why, as the Secretary said, for each transaction, a solicitor will have to go through all the historical deeds before you can establish title. And this will involve title. It will take time. It's not an efficient way of doing things. In 2004, the Land Titles Ordinance was enacted. The benefit with that ordinance is that once you register the title, that's indefeasible title. You simply refer to the land register. You don't have to keep or go through all the historical deeds. The idea is to streamline this system. The title-based system is adopted by other places such as the mainland and Singapore and other places. In fact, that system has been in place elsewhere for many years. Now, back in 2004 in Hong Kong, there were some major changes. So the government promised a thorough review before the commencement of that ordinance. Consensus has yet to be reached after negotiation, after consultation. There's been no consensus on the conversion of existing land, for example, and that's why the LTO has yet to commence. But there is a consensus on applying the title system to new land first, and then we will come to the conversion issue later. So that's also the proposal we briefed members on in 2022, and members generally supported this approach. Now, these are some areas where members commented on, so we will give a response on these points. First, new land. Our proposal for the scope of new land is that new land will refer to land granted or sold after the date on which the LTO comes into operation. And that covers land through land sale, private treaty grants, and land exchange. That means land surrendered to the government, which then subsequently regrants the land. We want to cover these three kinds of land because some sort of title investigation will have taken place before these processes. So in these cases, you are unlikely to see defective titles or ambiguities with the title. Back in 2022, we briefed members on the proposal. Members suggested covering land where title issues are unlikely, say land granted but not divided up. We looked into this concept. So we can consider, say, land granted but not sold for a while before the LTO takes effect. The problem is we're still talking about existing land. So an entry has already been made in the land registry. some instruments may have already been registered. So that goes back to the land conversion issue. There may be unregistered interests involved. Of course, those unregistered interests may be unlikely, but we simply cannot rule them out. And when there are such interests, how do we enforce those interests? That's a question to bear in mind. The legal advice we got is if we cover granted land under the new system, and we will have to consider an opt-out mechanism. We assessed this option. Putting this kind of land in scope will mean a limited amount of land that will benefit from the system. And this concept was not part of the consultation. And that would bring us back to the same issues about conversion. So the appropriate way to go is to do it in the prudent way. We have consulted for a long time on the new land first approach. We have the conditions ready. So our thinking is let's go for the new land first. You want to expand the scope further, you may get delays. So we decide to stick to the new land first approach. Now the second issue is the principle of indefeasible title. Under the current deed registration system, we stick to the common law principles. When property fraud happens, a property owner loses their title. So this is the former owner. This former owner can recover the title by going to the court. Under the 2004 LTO, for an innocent former owner, they can file an application with the court to obtain a court order to rectify the land register. And that's the mandatory rectification rule, or MR rule. And that's in line with the common law practice. We want title certainty. That's a clear policy goal. So we propose abolishing the MR rule. That's what we proposed in 2022, December 2022. So when a bona fide buyer is innocent, unaware of the fraud, and this new owner or the buyer has paid valuable consideration and is in possession of the property. In this case, even when a third party has committed fraud, we should protect the new owner. That is, the new owner as reflected in the registry. What then about the former owner? For the former owner, we propose an indemnity subject to a cap.
And members also expressed concern about the innocent owner. In the fraud case, he could be innocent and he could only get indemnity and not, like under the current system, restore his ownership. That doesn't seem right. And so we reviewed the situation and we came to a conclusion that if there is the mandatory ratification rule, that is to return the ownership to the previous owner, then a cautious purchaser at the time of the conveying process would ask a lawyer to review the history of the title, and that could run contrary to our intention of confirming title in the current proposal. And in other jurisdictions, they would not carry out mandatory ratification rule. And looking at the past figures of fraud, because of frauds causing people to lose the title, number of cases is limited. So, and also if we want to carry out the indivisible title principle, that is for all conditions to be met, to meet the 3 conditions required in order to protect the right of registered owner for him to keep his title, then that means that the previous owner does not have the title's right. So that's a quite high threshold. And in other jurisdictions, the indivisible title actually is quite easily contained. So for a new buyer, if they could not meet the 3 conditions, then the previous owner could ask the court to exercise discretion to restore his ownership right. We believe that members concerned about the mandatory ratification rule is out of concern for frauds. After review, we propose that in the amendment bill, there will be a new provision authorizing the registrar to, in suspicion of fraud or when a fraud has occurred, then the registrar can prohibit the transfer of the property. Last time we said that once the registration period is system is in place, we can exercise a provision requiring that in any registration of titles, the owner would receive a notification so that the owner would better keep possession of his property. And we also will issue a certificate for title owners to prove their ownership. So in the certificates, we will also have anti-forgery features to prevent fraud. The Land Registry will also work closely with the police and other stakeholders to educate the public regarding property fraud. And the third point is about this application of adverse possession on new land. That is in Hong Kong, for private lands, after 12 years of continuous possession of land, the owner cannot try to apply to an action to recover land. That is, the land ownership will be terminated. Policy-wise, in order to have better, clear guarantee of titles, under the new system for the new land, there should not claims for adverse possession would not arise for new land with title registered under the new land first proposal. And fourthly, about indemnity fund arrangement. Under the enacted LTO, will establish a land titles indemnity fund for payment of indemnity to persons who suffer loss of interest in land. There will be a cap on the indemnity, and the fund will be operating on a self-financing basis. And the indemnity is to be paid out from the indemnity fund, which is built up by levy on property transfers, which is the levy is at 0.014% of a flat levy rate. And in the LTO, we proposed a percentage of 0.017%, but after consideration by our actuarial consultant, and we found that 0.014% in terms of the levy rate should be enough to maintain the operation of the indemnity fund, and also it's more acceptable to the public. That is, for the buyers, for $1 million of payment, they have to pay a levy of about $40. In 2004, we proposed a cap of $3 million, and with the advice of the actuarial consultant, the having assessed the overall risk to be afforded by the indemnity fund, we propose a indemnity cap of $50 million. That is for property worth of $15 million, levy rate of 0.014%. The cap of the levy is $7,000. The proposed $15 million cap would cover 99+% of property transactions. Based on our past figure, more than 87% of properties sold would not exceed $10 million. So before you carry on, please let me say that we need to extend the meeting. If no objection, we'll need to extend the meeting to 11 a.m. because at least 6 other members are waiting to speak. We need to extend this meeting to 11 a.m. Please be concise. And we're also proposing that the government should have a backup fund of $150 million. That is, in the early days, if the indemnity fund has not accumulated enough funding and yet need to offer indemnities, then we will use the reserve fund. Otherwise, the reserve fund would be untouched. There's a loan facility of $150 million. And also, for anyone who wants to apply for indemnity payment, they need to file for an order by the court as a prerequisite for claiming indemnity in the case of fraud. That is, it needs to be revealed in the court ruling that a person was a party to the fraud and had substantially contributed to the fraud. And if the person had knowledge of a fraud, then such person is not entitled to indemnity. And there will be a maximum penalty of $5 million and imprisonment of 14 years for anyone fraudulently lodging an application for registration of any matter or fraudulently lodging an application for indemnity. Fraudster will be criminally liable for his action in a fraudulent transfer. Even after indemnity has been paid, we can take action to recover the indemnity. For example, recover the indemnity from the fraudster. We can also act on behalf of the claimants to get the indemnity. For example, if we found that a lawyer has suffered losses, then we can also, on behalf of the claimants or plaintiffs, take action. And if it's proven that the lawyers has acted and made efforts to make claims, and then the lawyers would not be held responsible legally. We feel that we will, in dealing with applications for the indemnity and combating fraud, we will collaborate with the police and can, with input from the police, adduce its own evidence to establish further findings before an indemnity is paid out. As for conversion of existing land, well, you may be concerned about, just handling with new land first, and what about the conversion of existing land? For existing land, it actually now involves about 2.9 million land registers. Earlier, we could not reach a breakthrough because in the land registers, how can we size up the problem of indeterminate ownership? So all along, in the process of making legislative amendments, we have kept exploring how we can facilitate registration of existing land. We carry out an internal study to assess in the existing registers the type and scope of land registers and the outstanding issues to be resolved. Our finding is that there's quite a number of indeterminate ownership cases, thousands of them. And so these cases normally involve title change issues, and so we are aiming to use, for example, technology to assess existing problematic registers or using AI to help us. Because in the process of resolving these cases, it can help us decide in what way should we cope with the existing land and which type of land registers should be the next batch for land conversion. We are looking at this issue and we want to reach a breakthrough in due course. The way forward, as I said, in March, we will introduce the amendment bill to LegCo, and we hope that within this year, if the amendment bill is passed by LegCo, then we will prepare the 6 pieces of subsidiary legislation for negative vetting by LegCo in 2026. And on the implementation of land registration on new land, we'll need to carry out publicity and education within the sector. Hopefully, the new land implementation will happen in the first half of 2027. Thank you.
而家咧就一個
7 members, including me, are waiting to speak. 4 minutes each member. Mr. Lau Kwok Fan. I support the proposed amendment. It's been 20 years. We've finally come to this point. We start with the low-hanging fruit. I have some suggestions. Title registration is better than deed registration because with title registration, you don't have to go through all the historical deeds. That eases transactions and makes Hong Kong more competitive. That also means greater protection for property owners. Title registration offers certainty, and that means better protection. So there are owners who wish to switch to the new title registration system. We heard that there are 2.9 million old land registers. That means they are under the old system. We start with the new land. So for existing property owners, is there a timetable or is there a direction, any mechanism for these existing property owners to migrate to the new system? Back in 2022, at this panel, when we were discussing this matter, I wondered if we could offer an option. Can we set up a voluntary transition system in cases where the title is clear and the owner may be willing to bear the cost for establishing title? Can we allow such owners to migrate from the deeds-based system to the new title-based system? I believe many people will go for this voluntary system because it's set and forget. Once you take care of this, you're good. And that also means better protection for their title. Now, with the new system, there won't be adverse possession. But what about the land and properties under the old system? In 2014, the Law Reform Commission made a recommendation about adverse possession, and there was a notification system that was proposed. Now, coming back here, for land under the deeds-based system, can we put in place the alert system? Can we put in place the Law Reform Commission's recommendation for land still under the deeds-based system? Secretary. The member asked about a timetable. Our policy intent is to eventually put existing land under the title-based system. That is our policy intent. But we are unable to provide a timetable just yet. As the land registrar said, we now want to focus on getting the new land right it's not just about this amendment. There will also be subsidiary legislation. But we are moving ahead on multiple fronts. We want to get a sense of the extent of the problems plaguing the existing properties. We need to size up the problem first. And then we can come up with a solution and then come up with a timetable. Getting a sense of the problem first will give us greater confidence in proposing solutions and a timeline. At this point, we cannot have too wide a scope. And that includes giving people the option to switch from the old system to the new system. Even for people who volunteer, they want to move on to the new system, some third party may come in and object to the title, and then compensation issues come up. And that's top of mind for stakeholders. Without sorting out these measures, we cannot make it work. Now, on adverse possession, under the title-based system, there won't be adverse possession. We will make that clear. For existing land under the deeds-based system, the Law Reform Commission did not ask us to do away with adverse possession altogether. Doing that would lead to wide-ranging implications. The LRO proposed an alert system. That will require legislation. Now, we haven't started with that. That's because we have prioritized other bills, such as compulsory sale, extension of government leases, etc. So, we will think about when we should start the legislation for the LROs or LRC's idea. Mr. Michael Ting. Adverse possession. You occupy the property for 12 years and then you own it. It's ridiculous. The Law Reform Commission's recommendation is simply trying to tweak the problem. For these legacy issues, are we going to just leave these issues? Do we just leave the current cases of adverse possession alone? Will we be revisiting adverse possession? I want to find out about this. Secretary, the Law Reform Commission's recommendation was to do away with adverse possession as we implement the land title system. And this is exactly what we're doing. We start small. We only cover new land with the title-based system. We hope that once this bill is passed, the new system, the title-based system, commences in 2027. And then from that point onward, for land granted and sold, the title-based system will prevail. Adverse possession will not apply to land under the title-based system. And for existing land, there can be an alert system. But we will have to consider when we can start the work on that front. For adverse possession, a landowner is involved, the government owns government land, and as for private properties, there has to be an original owner somewhere. And to get that right, we have to pursue public education because landowners will have to keep their land under their care so that adverse possession doesn't happen. Some people have occupied whatever land properties they're occupying for 12 years, and that's adverse possession. But then the court and the Law Reform Commission have left the issue unresolved. The LRC's view was that it would be very tough to address these points because people involved in adverse possession also have their interests. Everything has wider implications. We'll have to guard against unintended consequences. It's not appropriate to simply extinguish someone's interest in one go. So I'll just leave it be. I think, Mr. Tin, you have made your position clear. You are asking the same question in different forms. The answer will be the same. Property ownership is both sensitive and complicated. We focus on the future. Some people have already applied for adverse possession through the procedures through a court process. You cannot extinguish their right. But we just focus on the future. Ms. Carmen Khan. The Land Titles Ordinance was enacted in 2004. The Bills Committee chairman, vice chairman, and members are no longer here. Back then, people were idealistic. I'm also a lawyer myself, but I decided not to go into the property conveyancing stream because those deeds are old documents and on paper with faded prints and not really pleasant to look at. I shied away from the deeds. Now, this proposal is to go from a deed-based system to a title-based system. This is only right. It's only right we go to a deed-based system. The mainland, Singapore, and the UK have all moved from a deed-based system to a title-based system. Back then, we were idealistic, but now we have to face up to the problem. My question is, are the major stakeholders part of the reason that the process is held up? The government needs to be clear that stakeholders may not welcome a proposal, but if what you're doing is right, you have to find a way to do it. So we need resolve, and I would like to hear from the government what its thinking is. Now, 2.9 million existing land registers. It sounds like a massive problem, but what are some possible strategies? What have other jurisdictions done? Can we get a land registration officer to do the vetting? Can we have an office for a land registration officer? Can we have a vetting committee? Can we get expert and retired solicitors with no conflict of interest to help with the vetting? Can we have a plan? Can we have a roadmap? On the 15th of January, a G19 member put in an oral question during a council meeting. Can we cover all transactions on top of new land under the new system after the LTO commences operation? Instead of just the 450 properties, because it's a huge gap between 450 and 2.9 million. Secretary. Our policy resolve is to go from a deeds-based system to a title-based system. The question is how. for current land, 2.9 million land registers. With the new land first approach in place, we can then consider whether to cover the remaining 2.9 million land registers either in one go or in phases. Now, for some land, maybe that land has not changed hands many times. That's still current land, but the ownership history may be relatively straightforward. So maybe we can cover the existing land under the new system in batches instead of moving the 2.9 million registers to the new system in one go. That's one possibility we can consider. Now, the conversion, what strategies? We have discussed with stakeholders what's holding out the process. It's a very complicated matter. The land registrar has explained that to me once. So can I also now invite the land registrar to explain to us how complicated that is?
Members may wonder, for existing land, how come there's so many problems? Because we're just talking about registration. But in our internal research, we found that many lands are actually bound by historical factors, and also the indeterminate ownership could be dealt with the mother lord. In the process of development, and the ownership chain is unclaimed. There could be broken title chains as well. So if the buyers and sellers agree, you can still reach or finalize a transaction. Now in the deeds registration system, we actually still make sure that everyone comply with the law. For the existing 2.5 million land registers, we need to find out the problems facing them and when did those problems occur. Assume that for a small number of these, we found that for recently granted land, there are fewer problems. So then that will give us insights into, in our next stage of work, which batch of registers should we deal with at the later stage, because they are easier to deal with. So there have been key proposals from interested members, and that's also what we will consider. We will maintain an open mind. Next one, Wendy Hong. Thank you, Chairman. The amendment of the Land Titles Ordinance to implement title registration and to clarify ownership and to streamline the process has far-reaching results. But this is a step that we should take for the future. In 2004, when the ordinance was enacted, and now you're going to apply it to new land first, the whole thing has lasted for 20 years because of the controversy. Now you're going to implement the amendments and to eliminate adverse possession, indeterminate ownership, and so forth. And then you consider the 2.9 million land registers in the next stage. I think that's a pragmatic approach. But I've got several questions. First, you said that the key bottleneck is when it comes to conversion of land. Problems could arise because there could be a fraud, causing owners to lose their titles. UK used 180 years, and Singapore used more than 100 years to clarify the issue and to implement a titles system. It's understandable because the issue is so complicated. I understand you can't give us a timetable, but for your future roadmap, should we just deal with the various cases on a batch-by-batch basis? Every time there's a new conveyance, then it could be a time for you to change the law. And now you have simplified the process with the amendment. when people buy and sell properties, the time needed would be reduced. And it can also reduce the workflow of solicitors. I hope that the legal profession could really tie in with the new law and make changes accordingly. And also for the indemnity fund, and you're charging a levy for all transactions to support the indemnity fund. Is it that for all transactions they need to pay the levy, or does it just apply to transaction of new land? And also the paper says that the cap for indemnity fund is $50 million, and the government is proposing a loan facility of $150 million. Do you think that your income would be enough to cover the future expenses? Would there be a management fee needed to manage the indemnity fund? Secretary, Ms. Hong, first of all, mentioned about how we're going to implement the work by phases. Yes, there would be different stages. As I said, we may focus on land with fewer previous histories of transactions. How do we decide on the various phases of work? I think we need to wait till we have finished our internal study first. For this amendment, we'll focus on the new land first. And after the implementation of the new land proposal, the time needed for title registration would be reduced because there's no need to check the deeds. Whether the legal fees should come down. As for legal fees, I think that's what the legal profession will need to consider and make adjustment. But all along on this amendment, the legal professionals are key stakeholders, and they have maintained close communication with us. I'm sure looking ahead, they will continue to partner with us in relation to the work. As for the levy charged, it will only apply to new land. As for our proposal of, if needed, there could be a loan facility to support the indemnity fund. That is just for reserve purpose, and only when it's needed would we come to LegCo for the loan facility. Now we don't see the need at all for that facility, because even if, as you know, remember your example saying that we only have this limited amount, and in a few cases would use up the fund, but based on our past experience, the chances of having the disputes would be very rare. And for many transactions, most of them involve an amount of under $10 million. So quite a high percentage of our transactions are under $10 million. For the cap of $50 million is, relatively speaking, very loose. 3 members are in the queue. Andrew Lam, Louis Long, and I myself may overrun a bit beyond 11 a.m. So let's finish the discussion no matter what. Andrew Lam, Vice Chairman. Thank you. I'd like to thank Wendy Hong for reminding us that, it took so long for the UK to change the system. Well, I took part in discussion on this topic 30 years ago. The second time, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the organization that I served in thought that they would be little affected by the new law. But in the process, because of the complexity of pre-existing ownership, for many small owners we want to offer compensation to, they could be paying more than what they deserved in the end. And yet we could not offer compensation to them. So the whole process involved difficult discussion, and it was so complex. Well, 30 years ago, not to mention 30 years ago, it was even harder. Now we've waited for 20 years, and I've heard a lot. I've gone through all the old documents, the same old issues prevail. So now I strongly support taking one step forward. I can't wait for another 200 years. But there are 2 points that I think that we should clarify. That is, as mentioned in the paper, if you adopt the new land first proposal, the paper says that you have enough policy rationale to support that. But it's different from legal rationale. Even now, in the development panel meeting, we don't need to consider the legal rationale. But when a case goes to the court, there could be arguments over the new and old systems in relation to title ownership. So I hope that the Bureau will be well prepared for that. And in terms of risk of fraud, it's a separate matter how much the indemnity fund is worth, but I want to get a thorough explanation from the Bureau. For any transactions, the lawyers, of course, are involved. How high is the risk of a fraud? I want to hear from you what you think. A more detailed elaboration, please, Secretary. As for your reminder to us that when it comes to the Bills Committee, what we need to be aware of, yes, we will follow up on that. And also in dealing with titles, well, lawyers should have checked the deeds. Why are we still worried about fraud or issues in relation to titles? But there are various scenarios that could lead to problems. Maybe the registrar could explain to us. Yes, as I said earlier on, for existing land, how come there are issues with titles? Under the new system, as I explained to Mr. Lam before the meeting, I tried to explain that under the new system, it involves policies to combat the risk. We try our best to plug the loophole. For example, in the case of a transaction, property transaction, the lawyer will need to vet the registration application. Lawyers on both sides will need to do the vetting for the parties concerned, the ownership rights and so forth. A lot of vetting has to be done, and the title registry also need to be checked to make sure the owners are the right people. And we also provide verification guidelines for the lawyers to help with their checking so that they can reach the reasonable standard in the verification. Of course, lawyers have to exercise their own professional judgment as well. And after verification is done, and our colleagues at the land registry will also carry out simple checking to see that, make sure that the lawyers have complied with the legal requirements. If everything is okay, then we will issue to the owners a title certificate. That is, for any property transaction to happen, the lawyers would see the title certificate of the owner, which has anti-forgery features, and also allow us to make sure that this is a real certificate. And even if it was a replacement certificate, it can be proven to be a real one. So that's another safeguard. And thirdly, for a registered owner, we would also provide another service to them to help them detect fraud. That is, if there's a new applicant, we will send a message to the previous owner, and if his title certificate is lost, if all the safety thresholds are not reached, then we have another arrangement to combat fraud. That is, if someone is really cheated, then the person claiming indemnity must report to the police first, because they need to go to the court to apply for a title rectification order. So they need to report the case to the police, case of fraud to the police first. So the court would need to check the facts to see if fraud has occurred. If it's proven that fraud has occurred, then we need to check whether the registered owner meet the 3 required conditions. If the answer is yes, then the court would rule that the ownership would be granted to the right owner. So anyone cannot just come to us to apply for compensation. They need to go through legal proceedings first before they can have their application approved. And for someone in possession of a property, they would not be able to pass ownership to another person easily. If we have any doubts about fraud, we can liaise with the police and to have the police conduct more investigation to see whether a fraud is a case of fraud first. So, of course, fraud can happen, but all I can do is within our system to install various checking procedures to avoid fraud.
Mr. Louis Long. Chairman, I want to declare that I'm with REDA, Real Estate Developers Association. I'm also a member of the steering committee on the Land Titles Ordinance. I'm the oldest member on that committee. I've been with the committee since day one. So I know the history of that ordinance. The government proposes the new Land First proposal. I support it. Now, I do want to propose some ideas. Since we have already enacted the Land Titles Ordinance, we want to benefit from that ordinance as soon as we can. The new Land First approach is a pragmatic approach. Now, adverse possession. I was a member of the committee set up by the Law Reform Commission on adverse possession. The title-based system will be able to fix the problem of adverse possession. Now, the register. It is conclusive evidence of title. The 2004 proposal contained the mandatory rectification rule. Now the proposal is to drop the rule. But there's a common law principle at work. That's why the MR rule was proposed in 2004. Now the proposal is to drop the MR rule. But there's an indemnity system subject to a cap. The cap is now proposed to go up from $30 to $50 million, and that will cover more than 90% of property transactions. You are still going to see high-value properties that will go beyond this cap. The indemnity system will be funded by the levies. That means we cannot simply scrap the cap on the indemnity fund. So what measures can we take under the title-based system, the indemnity system, to guard against fraud? We want to prevent fraud from happening rather than simply compensating victims of fraud. Some members want to see a wider scope for the title-based system so that we cover more kinds of land. I say, let's take it one step at a time. We don't see the bill yet. But in the future, there will be a parallel system with the old and new systems existing side by side. But there may be cases, projects that straddle both systems. I would like to see something in the bill that will address that kind of situation. Secretary, a response? On hybrid cases, we will think about what to do about them. Finally, it's my turn. Hong Kong's land registration system is a deeds-based system. The paper explains the history. 1844, that's when the system was put in place, more than 180 years ago. Hong Kong has gone through development since then. Things get more and more complicated with land registration. Sticking to the old system gives rise to all kinds of hassle and problems. As other members said, the buyer's solicitor will have to go through all the historical deeds, and that means a huge pile of documents, and you can even see feces of cockroaches on the sheets of paper. It's okay to establish the title before you go ahead with the transaction, but even then, that title established is not good enough for future transactions, because in future transactions you still have to go through everything from scratch. Some law firms will be happy with this approach because they can charge their clients, and that also means business for safe boxes of banks. But property owners have to worry about their deeds because when something goes wrong with the deeds, owners cannot prove their title, and that is a ridiculous state of affairs. So I support the early tabling of this bill. The Land Titles Ordinance was enacted in 2004, and it has taken more than 20 years for us to come to this stage when we're simply just covering new land. No one is against taking this first step, but what about the second step? Many members asked questions about the second and subsequent steps. I know there are challenges. 2.9 million land registers for existing land. The problematic registers may be in the thousands, so that means the vast majority of registers are fine. Do we wait just for the handful of cases? We don't have many years to spare. Mr. Louis Long has gone through the entire journey. I think he knows best, and he must have many feelings about this journey. So we have to move fast, and the government needs to show us a plan and action. The paper says Hong Kong is among the few jurisdictions that stick to a deeds-based system. So I wonder what other places are just like us using this deeds-based system. Now, I may be repeating what other members have spoken, but those are my concerns. On the substantive matters raised, the issues raised, I believe we can have a more in-depth discussion when the bill is available. Secretary. The land registrar said they found thousands of registers that may be problematic, but they haven't gone through all 2.9 million registers. By thousands, she was saying that that's what they have found so far. They haven't gone through all the 2.9 million registers, but we are resolved to fix this problem. I'm grateful to members for their support. We have been in touch with many stakeholders, some from the legal profession, others from banks, others from Reader, and still others from Heung Yee Cook. Their support is vital for any future consensus we can reach. The paper says 2.9 million land registers, but it doesn't say how many the lands department or the land registry has gone through. I believe the problematic titles should be in the minority. Otherwise, you won't see so many transactions going on every day. It's a huge social cost with the old system. So that's all for this item. Any other business? Next week, it will be the Chinese New Year. I wish everyone good fortune, good health, and success in the year of the snake. There being all other business, I adjourn the meeting here. Thank you.